Hi there, I'm Amy and welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today I'm building another Animal Crossing inspired speed build in The Sims 4, and this time it's going to be a community lot inspired by Jack from Animal Crossing, and he's the Czar of Hallowen, and I think he's in pretty much every iteration of Animal Crossing, but I never did play the GameCube version, so I'm not certain on that. But you might have seen him before in New Horizons. He'll come over on Halloween Day and he'll give you certain tasks around trick-or-treating with your villagers, which is quite a lot of fun. In terms of how he looks, he is very Halloween inspired in himself, so I'll pop a picture up on screen of him, but he kind of reminds me of Patchy from The Sims, just with his pumpkin head. So I kind of like the connection there, that's kind of fun. So when I was coming up with a build style for him, I ended up going with more of a barn-esque look. So that's what I'm currently building. I'm just adding a few windows and things in, trying to make it look a little bit more interesting. And the lot ends up being a bar lot. I wanted to give spaces for your Sims to be able to come in and almost like they were coming in for a big meal with Jack himself and having lots of nice snacks with him. So that was kind of the inspiration behind it. And it just felt like a bar suited that more because a restaurant felt too formal almost, and I didn't want to have to use like the waiter station and things within the build, so that's kind of why I chose to go for a bar instead. And your Sims would still be able to order food and things from the bartender, so that kind of works with the whole idea of it being a place for people to come and have snacks with Jack himself. In terms of colour scheme for the build, I was a bit unsure on that to begin with. I knew I wanted a lot of orange and it does end up being very orange, but I didn't want it to be so much that it just looks a bit ugly, to be honest. So I ended up adding a lot of green because in terms of autumn being the season of harvesting crops, that felt very on theme. And then Jack also wears a purple robe. The only thing is, I feel like the purple swatches in The Sims 4 are very lacking, and I couldn't really find any that worked. I did briefly try out a wallpaper on the barn, which was almost a navy blue, so that felt sort of reminiscent of it, but I ended up going for this one from Island Living, which, whilst it wasn't the bright orange swatch that you can get from Island Living, it was just a very orangey wood swatch. And I quite liked that. It was bright, but not overwhelmingly so. And then since I was building a barn, I ended up using quite a lot of horse ranch in this. So the shutters and the windows are all from horse ranch, as well as the stone wallpaper on the bump out to the left-hand side. In terms of where this building is, it's actually in Henford on Bagley. It's the very top build, or very top lot within the world, just next to that waterfall in kind of the, I can't remember what the area is called, but it's the area that's got the national park and things, and it's around where you can find the creature keeper. So it's up on that lot, and you can see it's called Cordelia's Secret Cottage if you're looking for it. I do end up changing this season to be autumn just a little bit later once I got the general shape of the build, so that will suddenly change, and I think it helps add to the vibes of it really nicely. So in the kind of garden area, I wanted to have another building here, so I included a bit of a gazebo, and the plan was in front of that I wanted to have a pumpkin patch, so if your Sims did visit here, they'd be able to harvest pumpkins, and there will also be the pumpkin carving stations from the Spooky Day stuff pack. So you can do a few things with them. Sadly, I think if you harvest pumpkins, it doesn't use those pumpkins when you actually try and carve them. I don't think there's that sort of cross compatibility between the packs, which is a bit of a shame, but you can always pretend. But it does just mean that carving the pumpkins will always cost your Sims money, no matter whether or not you harvested one. I also wanted to make sure that the area was fairly structured, so I added in these fences, which are from the Get Together expansion pack, I believe. I thought the swatch of them worked a bit better than the stone walls that came from Cottage Living, so I made sure to use those. And then the little archways that I've put around are actually wedding arches from Cottage Living, but the orange plants on them I thought worked really nicely, and it just seemed like a more interesting way to decorate the entrance for each of the sections, so I made sure to add those in. And now you can see that I've switched the season to fall, so the foliage around the area looks so much more in keeping with the theme. And I pulled out a few plants and trees from the Cottage Living debug, so they tie into the world around. I also pulled out a few other items from debug, including this tractor and that wheelbarrow to the side that sort of spilled out onto the floor. They just felt like they added to the farm vibe that I was going for. So I thought that was quite fun to include. And then it almost seemed like a fun area for your Sims to take photos to just celebrate that they'd been to this interesting lot and carved some pumpkins or something like that. So it just felt like a little bit of extra fun storytelling. I also added in a few things from the Romantic Garden stuff pack. So you'll see in the back that there's the wishing well from there. I just, again, thought it would be an interesting additional item to include. And because this is more of a spooky build I was going for, that does have some kind of spooky outcomes depending on how much you donate to the wishing well and what it is you wish for. So that felt like a bit of a fun addition for gameplay if you did want to visit the slot. If you wanted to download the slot as well, it is available on the Sims 4 gallery just under my EA ID, which is AWayfaringFrog. The details of that are also in the description down below. Since I got really excited about the fact that this is a very pumpkin-inspired lot, I do end up decorating the left side of the area, which is where you'll be able to grow pumpkins. I also make sure to include Patchy because he just feels like he's a perfect fit, given that he literally has a pumpkin head, and you can befriend him and then he can help with the gardening. And then I come back to the bar a lot later on and decorate that last. But in terms of landscaping, I just used my normal preference of including these low-lying flowers everywhere. So I've just marked out where I want to have a lot of the flower beds around the space. And then the pumpkin carving stations I've just popped in front of where the pumpkins will actually be growing. It's a bit of a small patch, but because of how I wanted to lay everything out, I felt like it was adequate enough. And you could also maintain it if you did want to visit here and play with that aspect of the gameplay, because sometimes I feel like the oversized crops in Cottage Living can be a lot to look after. And then for the gazebo, originally I was thinking maybe I'll use this space as kind of a storage area for the gardening tools, and maybe whoever owns the slot hires someone to help people harvest and look after the crops. But then I had a look through the Spooky Day stuff items and I found this ridiculous jack-o'-lantern rug, and it fit perfectly in this little gazebo area. So I thought it ended up being a bit more fun to have this as a nice little space for your Sims to sit and chat. And then maybe, I don't know, the parents could hang out there while their kids are carving pumpkins at the stations just outside. So I thought that was quite a fun little feature. And going through all of the Spooky Day stuff items, I sort of forgot how similar they are. Well, actually, almost literally the same as the items from the Seasons expansion pack. The kind of lamps where it's got 3 jack-o'-lantern heads on it, those are already in the Seasons pack, but I think they just come in slightly different swatches. I'm not even sure if the ones I used are from Seasons or if they're from the Spooky Day stuff pack. But it always confuses me why they bothered making the Spooky Day stuff pack at all. I do like being able to create jack-o'-lanterns. I think that's a lot of fun. And as you can see, I've started littering them around, especially in this gazebo area. But it's just such a shame that that pack feels almost like a waste of money in a way. I feel like it's not far off being the size of a kit, but I guess it's got a few more items than you would otherwise in a kit, and it does come with casts as well as build-buy stuff. But it really doesn't feel like it's very fleshed out, and the fact that a lot of the items are duplicated in in Seasons, it just feels like a big shame. But it's a very old pack, so the Sims team have definitely got a lot better at creating newer packs. I think they're a lot more fleshed out, which is really good to see. And hey, at the time of recording, we still don't have fairies in The Sims 4. I really would love to have them, but at least in the Spooky Day stuff pack, there is a costume where you can dress up your Sims as a fairy, so we can pretend until and if fairies ever do come to the game. So just adding a few more flowers around the spaces, I incorporated a few different colours, so there's kind of a deep purple, which I felt was a good nod to Jack's robe that he has in Animal Crossing. Otherwise, I made sure to include a lot of orange plants. The planter boxes on the building as well, they're actually from werewolves, and I liked how rustic they looked since it's actually a makeshift drawer that has had some of the lavender added into it. And I wasn't going for too rundown of a space. I didn't want it to be like a super spooky lot, but I liked having a bit of a rundown aspect since that's very associated with Halloween decor, I feel, especially with people putting fake spider webs and things around the houses to celebrate. While I was placing down the pumpkins as well, I did make sure to only use the ones that wouldn't decay. So there are a few in cottage living where you can make the oversized one, or you can grow the oversized one, otherwise there's sort of a small and medium version. And the latter two, they will decay and then start to make Sims unhappy because they don't like the decor around them. So I did make sure to only use the largest one, and then I went into live mode, which allows you to kind of select them and make sure that they're preserved. I did the same thing for the jack-o'-lanterns as well. You have to be, I think it was level 10 handiness skill to be able to preserve the jack-o'-lanterns. So I did make sure to go through and do that. I think it's fine if you've got your Sims at their own house and the jack-o'-lanterns eventually degrade over time, but on a community lot it felt not quite right if the decor around the space just kept dying and you had to keep replacing it, since you can't sadly own lots like bars in The Sims 4. I really hope that one day they update the game and change that so you can own lots. I feel like the 4 rent pack was a good step in that kind of direction, but for now, it does feel just a bit better that they don't degrade at all, so I made sure to go through and preserve all of those. And then decorating the outdoor area for the bar, I loved the items from Cats and Dogs. The tables from there just felt like the perfect colours. Each of the wood swatches for these items, which comes in these picnic tables, as well as the tables that I'll end up putting into the bar area later on, they're all very colourful, but these ones really did fit the Halloween vibe a lot better, I think. They're just so pretty, and they really feel like dark and spooky, and they work with the place. After adding some lavender into all of the flower beds around the lot, again to help tie in that purple robe that Jack wears, I do then just pop inside and start decorating the actual bar area. So originally I wasn't really sure what to include in here, but I eventually came up with the floor plan, so I cut out quite a bit of the process of that, just because originally I was planning to have like a full kitchen, and that was before I decided to have just this lot as being a bar. So I replaced the bump out of the build with the bar area, which originally was going to be a kitchen, but I think it looks a lot better here. I did end up covering up one of the windows at the back though, using this bar back, which is from Horse Ranch. I wasn't sure if that was necessarily a good idea, but I don't think it looks bad from the outside, and I still like having the window there just from the outside, but I really wanted to be able to fill up the wall with something a bit more visually appealing, so the bar back suited that need quite well. And then, as I mentioned, I wanted to include these Cats and Dogs tables just because they have such a perfect swatch for this type of build. I just love all the colours in it. It almost feels like all the colours of Jack from Animal Crossing are in here. The orange, this kind of a deep bluey purple, and then the almost yellowy green. And I incorporated a lot of mismatching chairs. So there's one from Seasons, I think there's one from Cats and Dogs, and then Paranormal. The colours of all of those again tied in really well with the theme that I was going for, and I think it just added a lot more interest rather than having the same chair throughout all of the tables. And cluttering up the bar back, of course, I had to add even more pumpkins. I made sure to light all of them as well in live mode, so when it's nighttime they are all glowing and it looks very nice and kind of moody, which is fun. For bar type lots in The Sims 4 as well, it's actually mandatory that you have a TV in the build, so you might be wondering where that's gonna go, but I end up putting quite a few activities upstairs. Originally I wasn't sure what to do with that space, so it felt like a good section to have more of like a cozy activity area, so we'll get to that a bit later, but that is where the TV ends up being. You may also be wondering why I decided to use a really big table in the center of the room for the bars instead of just using the smaller table throughout. It did end up being a bit squishy. I had to scooch some things around while I was playtesting just because the Sims routing through all of the tables and chairs, they struggled a bit. But I ended up making it work basically how it looks now, just with a few things nudged here and there so that they can get around more easily. The reason that I wanted to include this long table though is I just had a vision of this really long banquet table full of like sweets and pies, specifically pumpkin pie, I guess, and just things like that. So that was the vision with that. I didn't end up filling it with any kind of foods though, just because again, they'd start to decay in The Sims 4. So I did leave that out, but that was the vision that I had. There were probably a few items that I could have used from various packs to add that in, but I thought it was better to just leave it a bit more bland in that sense and not completely cover it with clutter. It's also more usable for your Sims with less clutter because they can't eat at the table if there are certain objects on it with a certain hitbox or size. So I did just want to keep the little lanterns from the Spooky Day Stuff pack since they were small enough to fit there. And as for the bathrooms, I did include a little changing table just because it felt like this might be a bit of a family lot where the kids could go pumpkin carving with the parents, going to the bar area. So one of the toilet areas, which you can access underneath the stairs, that just has a bit more space. So I could fit the changing table in there, whilst the other one is just basically a repeat of the first bathroom, but a little bit smaller. I also like to try and make sure there's always at least 2 bathrooms on a community lot, because Sims seem to have this inane need to go and talk to themselves in the mirror all the time. So if my Sim needs to actually use the bathroom for its primary purpose, it takes forever to get rid of whatever Sim has decided to just talk to themselves. So I did make sure to include 2 for that reason, and it fit really well with where I ended up putting the stairs. And I also used this as an opportunity to use this ridiculous wallpaper from the Spooky Day Stuff pack, but I thought it was a bit of fun, so I included that into the bathrooms. And then just in the back corner by the back door, I added a few clutter pieces here, again just to help fill out the space without over cluttering it. So I added a few plants and like a bit of a menu board here was the vision behind that. And I really liked having the jukebox under the stairs. The colours on that item looked perfect for the room, and I just thought it was a bit of fun to have a more traditional music player. There was also a bit of space to sneak some more pumpkins in here just to bring them through to more areas of the room. After adding some artwork onto the walls, I then went around the bar area and included a lot of little lanterns. They're the ones from the Horse Ranch pack. They're pretty much my favourite lanterns in the game. I do also really like the little one on a wooden block, which seems to have, it's just like a jar with fairy lights in. I don't think I used that in this build, but those 2 lamps are probably my favourite for this kind of aesthetic. I think they're really cute and they work so well. And these ones from Horse Ranch aren't actually that bright either, so they help to add to kind of a moody vibe without overloading the room with loads of light. Of course, in live mode though, you can alter that anyway, so if it was too bright, you could just dial that down. I also included these overhead lights from Cottage Living, which matched with the Horse Ranch wall lights really well, I thought. And then upstairs, originally when I was building this, I thought this was going to be a lot more open to the ground floor, but I did change that in the end and closed it completely off. And so up here, I just make a bit of a games room in this back area. There's just a dartboard, which is the one from Get Together. I kind of weirdly liked the more ornate look to the dartboard itself, whereas there has been a recent update, which was from the Happy at Home event reward, which has now just become base game anyway, but that one has a more plain version dartboard. So usually I would probably prefer that one, but for this particular build, I thought the more ornate one from Get Together worked. And then there's also just a little games table back there, so you can play jigsaws or cards with your Sims, depending on what packs you've got. And then into the room that you first come into when you come up the stairs, this is where I put the TV area, and I tried to make it a little bit cozy. So it's a bit like a living room, but I feel like you see these kinds of areas in bars quite a lot anyway. So I thought that worked nicely, and I did again play test this so your Sims can get up and around the chair that I've got in the corner. That armchair with the dark blue swatch is actually from the Werewolves pack. It's probably an item I haven't really used much before because I don't generally gravitate towards those really orangey wood swatches. But I thought that worked really well with this sofa from the Growing Together pack, just because it tied in the dark blue from the cushions and the throw that are on top of the sofa. So they worked really nicely here. I can definitely see myself overusing that sofa in autumnal builds, because I think that's the exact same one that I used in my autumnal spellcaster house, which was a video from last week. But I really love it, and I think it's so perfect for this season, so might as well use it while I can. And then for the TV, I did end up switching it out for this one from the Basement Treasures kit, just because again it had a slight rundown feel to it a bit more, which I liked. And then in the little nook, I end up including a few just little kids things to do here. So I added in the Spooky Day stuff pack plushie, the one that toddlers and kids can talk to. It just looks really creepy. I've never used it before, I don't think, especially not in this bright orange swatch. But again, it felt like it fit the vibe. And it's a bit chaotic in this room with how bright it is. And I added a few decals in using, again, that Spooky Day stuff pack, or maybe those ones were from Seasons. Again, it's kind of hard to differentiate the two sometimes, but I did include a few of those, so it felt very kid-friendly. And it was a nice little space for your kid Sims to be able to have an activity to do while the parents are drinking at the bar. And then the games room, again, I just brought in some of the chairs from downstairs. I thought they worked nicely here, and even though it's probably a bit of a hazard having the dartboard there and sitting so close to it, I figured that, again, it's The Sims, it's fine. They're never going to accidentally hit someone with a dart. And I just brought in a few more of the Halloween-y themed items, so the lanterns, and there's a few sweet jars that you can get from the paranormal stuff pack. So I littered those about on the shelves just to give a bit more interest to the room. I also brought in a rug from the cats and dogs stuff pack just to make it be a bit more cozy again up here. I wasn't expecting cats and dogs to be so useful for this style of build, but I've used quite a lot of items from it, to be honest. Anyway, we're now coming to the end of the speed build portion of this video, so if you did enjoy it, please be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and enable notifications so you'll know when I next upload a video. You can also download this build using my EA ID on the Sims 4 gallery, which is just AWayfaringFrog. You can also grab the build using the hashtag AWayfaringFrog, and that information is all in the description down below. As always, if there's any builds you'd like to see me make in the future, be sure to let me know in the comments down below, and let me know what you think of this one. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you have a great rest of your day, and a very happy Halloween. Bye now!